So if you're applying for the marriage green card, that's going to go through a lot of different steps and a lot of forms. I know it can be overwhelming. So the process, it's pretty simple overall, but it's a lot of steps. So I'm going to do the breakdown really quick. You're going to start off with the I-130. That's going to be the petition for alien relative. So that's going to be where you end up. It's the U.S. citizen that's going to sponsor the immigrant. So you're going to file that. There's a 130A that's in there that you'll print out and attach in there, and it's going to be done online. Now, a lot of these forms, if you're doing it, this will be for the spouse, but you also have to, if you have kids from the spouse that they're bringing over, you're going to have to file each of these separate for the kids too. So there'll be one for each person. Now, the 130 is going to be that. It's a pretty simple form compared to the 485. That's going to be the green card form, the adjustment of status. Again, that also has to be done. Each form for each person. A lot of people, of course, are just getting married, so they don't have kids. But nowadays, there's people with kids. So same thing with my wife. She had a kid, so we had to file 2 separate forms. I try to recommend that you do them separate packets completely. You'll do some stuff later in the end. You can put them in the binders together. But now, when you're doing the 130, I recommend printing it out, keeping a copy. When you do the 485, that's going to be done by paper. Again, you're going to keep a copy of it. So everything you're doing, you're going to need to keep a copy in the binder that you're creating from the beginning. Now, the 485, that's where you're going to put all your evidence, every bit of paperwork that you're going to put in there. So all of that's going to go in there. Now, that's not going to be a binder that you're going to send to USCIS. That binder is going to keep separate, but you will have the main packet that you're going to send. So you still want to keep that organized when you send it. But that's going to go by mail to them, and just try to be as organized as possible when you send it, so that way they have it. And then you'll file like the receipt for the 130 with the 485. Now, with the 485 form, when you do send it in, you also are going to send in the 693. That's the medical form. So that is done by a USCIS doctor. You're going to find one. It's easy to find. You can just search for it. But what they do on there is most of that form is going to be filled out by the doctor. They're going to give you a copy that is sealed in an envelope, and you're going to put that with your 485 packet. So now, when you're filling out the 485, you can go ahead and send in the 131 form. So if you plan on doing traveling, you can go ahead and fill out that form and attach it with the 485. So that can be done at one time, or you could do it separate later. But the best time to do it is when it's all together. Now, the work card, if your spouse that is planning on getting a job here in the U.S. During your time, get the work card. You can file it with the 485 form as well. Normally, that takes about 3 to 6 months on average. Of course, it could be quicker, could be a lot later. It depends on how fast immigration is going. Now, what they're going to do is those forms, you file it, put it in a packet. Remember, keep all those on a copy. That's going to be all your main forms, but there is one other form that you're going to need to put with the 485, and that is going to be the 864. That is your affidavit of support. That is filled out by the citizen. So that is important, and whoever is the citizen is now financially responsible. So you got to understand that you're responsible for that person while they're over here, which your spouse should be fine. Again, if they have kids, you're financially responsible. So it's important to understand that until they become a citizen, you are in that role, even if things don't go well. Now, if you don't make the total, so there's a poverty guideline that you can check. It's, verify it on there. For you and your spouse, for 2 people, there's a certain number you got to make. It's not a lot, but some people don't qualify. Now, if they have kids, now you have kids, now that poverty guideline is now 3 people or 4 people. So you have to look at the guideline to see where you are and see if you fit that total. You might need another person to add on to that total, so you can have a joint sponsor, and that's an 864A. So if you do that, you can even have your spouse, if they're allowed to work, be part of the sponsor. So I went ahead, even though I made money, I went ahead and included my wife whenever I did my form, just so that way there was no reason whatsoever that we weren't above the poverty. So, but it was just to do extra, because they're sometimes very picky, and I didn't want to have any reason whatsoever. So all of that will go with the 485. So you can send all those documents. It just depends if you want to do the work. Now, the good thing is the work, you usually don't need it for the kids. So that's one document that's probably only going to be for the spouse. Now, you're going to submit all that. You're going to get the receipt for each of those documents back. So you get a receipt notice. That's going to show you all that, that they've been approved, they've been accepted. Now, they do the request for evidence. Now, it's unlikely that they're going to send you the request for evidence now. They're being a little more picky. So you want to make sure that you're thorough on every line, on every document. And I always recommend that if there's a blank, you put NA, not applicable. So any blanks, they're going to want you to do that. Now, when you're doing this stuff, make sure that you're keeping a copy of all the receipt notices and anything that immigration sends you, because that's going to be in your binder too. So all of the paperwork that you've been collecting and sending to immigration, all the evidence, even when you submit the form 485, all the new evidence that you're doing, photos and trips and whatever, you're still adding to it. So you're going to send that information in the future over to, because once you get the receipt notice for the 485, you can log into your USCIS account and upload more evidence as well. So I always recommend sending all that in before. At least a week or two before. I would say probably 2 weeks is better. And then that way you have more evidence for the whole relationship until you get to the interview. Now, when you do the interview, they're going to give you that if you passed everything. So usually if you did all that, they're already looked at and accepted your paperwork. So at that point, it's more about the questions. So you have your binder that you created. You're going to have all your evidence in there. Anything that you might think they need, it's going to be there. So you're going to feel confident because of the binder, which is why I highly recommend the binder. But also the interview questions. You're going to want to prepare for those. There's a lot of different questions they can ask. They're going to ask you the questions in the 485 form. Basically go through a few of those. And then that's going to be standard now. But all the other questions they can ask you about your relationship, how you got here, stuff about kids, all of that stuff is important to know, not just you, but your spouse. You want to be able to interact and basically say the same thing as far as what your spouse is going to say. So you always want to be prepared for that. And the more you're prepared with the questions, the more confident you're going to be when you go in. And then if you're that prepared, most of the time they're not going to ask you that many questions anyway, because they already feel like, okay, you've already submitted all this evidence, you got the binder, you're prepared, and then they can tell usually from the first few questions when they ask. So a lot of times you can avoid going through a long process. So now I do have the packets that I created that goes over all the steps. Now, if you're married less than 2 years, there's a 751 form. That's going to be to remove the conditions, so you're going to need that too. I included that in a marriage bundle packet that I did that goes over all of these forms, the binder prep, and the interview questions. So if you want that, the link is going to be in my bio. I have a coupon code that I'm going to include that's $10 off, so it's a little bit cheaper now. But this will help you go through your process, and it has details, red flags, tips, every sample answers, everything you need in there. So good luck, everybody. If you have any questions, respond in the comments.